Hey there folks, the number one fan of going on hiatus and coming out of it just to talk about the new Lil Wayne record, here with another album review, and today I want to talk about the new Lil Wayne record, The Carter 6. I'm serious, I was on hiatus for like over a month here, didn't plan to come back because life has been, a little silly, a little goofy, and I just wasn't ready until I felt properly settled in. And, despite the fact that I'm in the middle of the moving process, this new entry in the Carter series of albums from Lil Wayne is just so atrocious that I can't bring myself to not talk about it immediately. This is easily the best entry in the series so far, I said facetiously, lying. It's definitely one of the worst records Wayne has put out, if not honestly the worst, and that's saying a lot considering the discography that this man has created for himself over the past couple of decades. For those who aren't already in the know, which you probably are if you're watching a video on the Carter 6, but I digress, The Carter is an album, came out in 2004, very good album, and it kind of kick-started the most prominent series of records that Lil Wayne has ever been involved with, and one of the most prominent series of records in the history of rap, arguably. I mean, The Carter 2 and 3 are two absolute classic, kind of must-listen albums for rap in this century so far, no matter what subgenres or what niches you kind of find yourself gravitating towards, just two classics right there. And The Carter 4 and 5, despite not being perfect, definitely proved that Wayne still had some gas in the tank, so to speak. A legend that, while no longer in his prime, was still capable of putting out strong releases. And even when the past decade or so has seen Wayne kind of consistently taint his discography by putting out records that really just don't deserve to have his name attached to it based on the consistency that he did hold for himself at one point, it's nice to usually see him put out a new Carter record and kind of prove himself as being consistent once again. That's not true anymore. The Carter 6, the obviously sixth and latest installment in the Carter franchise, is such an atrocious album, and I don't even know where to begin with how god-awful this record truly is, both in the context of Wayne's discography and just as a piece of music in general. I try not to hate too hard on artists who have been around for a longer time at this point with massive legacies, especially someone like Wayne, one of the most undeniably influential rappers of all time. And, I didn't really think if it was a good idea to rag on this too hard, but come on, man, just listen to this thing. First thing first, the beats here are just terrible. A lot of them just sound sort of plinky, for lack of a better example. A good chunk of them sound dated, almost more of a early to mid-2000s kind of sound, which Wayne probably would have sounded great on in the early to mid-2000s, but in big 2025, where that kind of sound has continuously aged worse and worse with every passing year, and Wayne kind of feeling less and less hungry as an artist with each concurrent release, I don't know, it just doesn't really feel like it's a sound that he needs to be doing at this point in his career, and it just sort of feels like him leaning on either nostalgia or just something that he's used to at this point. And beyond that, a lot of the instrumentals here just sound cartoonish, almost. I mean, a large chunk of this album, I would say, sounds like an NES game. Like, Wayne was in the studio, and then, they had some guy just come in and fucking blast Ice Climbers on the NES in the background, and they just left that in as the beat. A lot of it just sounds so unpolished, so unfinished, so raw, but not in this way where things feel kind of dirty or, even kind of just artistically experimental in any way, because it doesn't feel intentional. I mean, obviously the beats are what they are because Wayne and other people involved with this record wanted them to sound like that. That goes without saying. But at the same time, it never really feels like he's going in a direction where he's trying to make things feel minimalistic, to go back to his old dirty South kind of roots. And the trap instrumentals and influences here feel so unfinished that they never really feel like proper trap per se. They never contain that kind of energy. And Wayne certainly doesn't help his case either by delivering one of the most lackluster performances of his career in recent memory, which, again, I hate to restate this multiple times, but that's saying a lot when this man arguably hasn't put out a truly good album in a number of years at this point. I also feel like this record does kind of fall to a lot of cliches, stereotypes, and tropes that we've seen within the past couple of years of mainstream rap, the biggest being interpolations or sonic references to other songs, and I mean, some of them here are actually pretty cool. I don't think the track Bells is that great of a song, but I like the fact that it's Wayne referencing Rock the Bells by LL Cool J, a song by one of the most influential rappers of the 1980s, a song that is something that obviously means something to Wayne as an artist, as a person. So even though I don't think it's a great track when Wayne does his own take on that flow and has himself, performing over his own take on that kind of beat, I do think it's nice to at least see him kind of share his passion for those that came before him, especially at this point in his career where he himself has influenced countless rappers. It's almost kind of humbling of him to sort of take his persona down a notch and not be this grand rapper of any kind or, this larger-than-life music industry figure, and rather just be a person that wants to focus on honoring those that influenced him decades ago. So I think that's pretty nice, albeit slightly misguided in execution. But then there's songs like Island Holiday, which is based around Island in the Sun by fucking Weezer. What? I mean, I don't know if it's intentionally trying to reference that remix of Can't Stop Partying by Weezer, everyone's favorite Weezer song, of course, that has Lil Wayne on it, where he's like, it's Weezer and Wheezy, the all-time classic, best verse Lil Wayne has ever laid down, bar none, best Weezer track, bar none. I don't know if it's referencing that in an attempt to kind of poke maybe towards a bit of fun towards his past, or if it's trying to actually be serious. I truly cannot tell. It's absolutely impenetrable in that regard, and I nearly respect it. I nearly do. But the issue is that it sounds like shit. So I can't bring myself to do it. It just feels lazy, it feels directionless, and it feels like it's a creative choice made by someone that isn't that deeply interested in putting forth this kind of work anymore. I mean, Wayne kind of wrapped up the Carter series nicely with the Carter 5, in my opinion. Not that that was the best of the series, but I thought that, honestly, if Wayne had retired directly after that, it would have been a nice career ender. It would have been a good finale. So it just feels like the Carter 6 is this sort of tacked on sixth part to the Carter series that doesn't really need to exist, and I can't help but feel that this record just doesn't have the soul or passion put into it in the same way that the previous 5 entries have, and I think that a lot of those references and interpolations certainly are a big key factor in that. Even though they don't make up the majority of the album, it really does feel like an artist kind of putting out something that is leaning on other tracks to an egregious extent. A lot of Wayne's flows here are pretty questionable as well. I mean, songs like Peanuts to an Elephant definitely don't have his best or most impressive work from a delivery standpoint on them. And I think that the fact that there are some almost career-spanning, self-referential kind of moments here, like tracks where he's going back to his rock era with Rebirth, sort of almost, that almost just kind of make things feel like it's him at his least enthused, for lack of a better term. And I think that you can kind of see that in the features here as well. You either have younger rappers that Wayne has undeniably influenced, like Big X the Plug, that immediately outshine Wayne in every capacity in terms of energy, in terms of lyrics, in terms of flow, or you have just some absolutely baffling choices, like, why the fuck is Bono here? MGK and Kodak Black are on the same song. That's Nightmare Blunt rotation. Easily. My point is that the features here either feel like younger artists that Wayne influenced that are now having this chance to work with someone that they were obviously inspired by and end up blowing him out of the water in turn, or artists that are just popular right now and have been for a few years, and whether they were or were not influenced by Wayne were just included on the album because, again, they were popular. And again, it just kind of does, for me at least, wrap back around to this overarching idea that the Carter 6 is not an album with that much passion put into it, or if there was, it certainly didn't come across in the final recording. I think the worst part of this album, though, is Wayne's songwriting, because, my god, don't get me wrong, he's had his fair share of bad lines in the past, but when he sounds so lacking in any sort of energy on this record, it makes the bad lines that much worse, because I do honestly think that with the backlash this record has immediately gotten from its lyrical content in the wake of its release, I think most of the lyrics here, people, including myself, would not care about that much if this was a record that felt like it had any degree of hype behind it. And I think that the worst part of this record, honestly, is Wayne's lyrical content, which is kind of weird to say because Wayne has never been a perfectionist in terms of his songwriting, but he's always been clever for the most part, and he's also known when to dumb it down for the sake of making a song a bit more simplistic in a good way, of course. And I honestly don't think that this record's lyrics are the worst thing he's ever done. He's had a lot of bad lines over the years, some pretty god-awful stuff. I mean, the man's biggest song, A Milli, has a line where he's talking about being a venereal disease like a menstrual bleed. But the thing is that no one, including myself, cares about his questionable lines now and again, because usually they are paired with a lot of hype. This record doesn't have that. So when he delivers a bad line, not only does it kind of make me cringe, but it also falls flat on its face and feels like a joke that you tell and then no one in a crowd of like 10 people laughs at it, and then you just kind of have to shuffle away and pretend that the entire experience you just had didn't actually happen. When he says stuff like, I like the pussy deep dish when it goes squish, 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 or lines like, before I let you piss me off, I'll pee on myself, or maybe the most insane line on this record, eyes tight like my name, Wong Ding Ding Dong. Excluding the racism, what the fuck does that even mean? That's not even a joke. That doesn't even have a punchline. This record is just filled with lyrics that make no fucking sense whatsoever and are either baffling in terms of their stupidity, lack any sort of punchline, when they are obviously meant to be setups of some sort, at least I'm assuming. And more than anything, it just highlights where Wayne is at as a songwriter at this point in his career. He doesn't seem that capable of creating a lot of the great punchlines, a lot of the double entendres, triple entendres, a lot of the metaphors that he was capable of at his peak. And while I'm not saying that I expect him to put out the same degree of quality and consistency that he was putting out 20 years ago, because that would just be ridiculous, I think it's pretty fair to at least want him to be on a decent level of quality. You know, lines that actually have meanings to them, you know, jokes that land, you know, 2 times out of 10 instead of 0 times out of 10. My point is that I really do think this record is Wayne at a lyrical low point, and when you pair that with everything from the lazy trap beats to the lazy chipmunk soul kind of moments to the extremely lazy guitar singer-songwriter, I guess, oriented moments, it just makes this album feel like an absolutely one-dimensional mess of a record that would have been better off as a scrapped and then leaked mixtape than it would have been an actual release in the most recent, and maybe, who knows, last entry in one of the most commercially, and even to an extent critically, successful series of albums in not only the history of rap, but the history of popular music in general. So yeah, apologies again for the bad cam and the somewhat mediocre microphone quality, but I just really wanted to come on YouTube here and talk about this record because I really just was shocked at what I heard. I expected this album to be mediocre, maybe even a little bit bad, and then when I saw people talking initially about some of the lyrics, I pretty much knew immediately it wasn't going to be great, but I assumed it was going to be weak and underwhelming in the same way that most of Wayne's recent work has been. So when a record like this comes out that isn't just underwhelming, isn't just a bit underdeveloped, but is an absolute abhorrent mess with no coherent ideas whatsoever, it is an absolutely mind-boggling experience that a truly legendary rapper such as Lil Wayne can end up with an album like this in his discography, especially after so many years of becoming a truly grizzled veteran of rap and various different subgenres there within it, and becoming one of the most influential rappers of all time while doing it. It's beyond disappointing. That word doesn't even begin to describe what is on display here. Just truly a shocking record, and, you know, at least Rebirth had ambition. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyways, the last track, Written History, is pretty cool. I don't hate it, so yeah, I'm gonna give this record 1 star out of 5. With that being said, that is the end of this album review. Thanks for watching the Infinite Jukebox, and I'll see you in the next one.